Alright, it's been a long time since I did an indie spotlight, but today I'm finally back again for the series with a game called Falling Frontier. The funny thing is, just because I haven't done as many spotlights in the recent past, it does not mean I haven't been playing a lot of indie games. I've actually been on a pretty long turn-based strategy game kick lately, and I'll hopefully get some of those games their own spotlight as well in the near future. But today is a space combat RTS game called Falling Frontier, developed by one person. Now, before going any further, I want to disclose right off the bat that I have a special interest in this game for a number of reasons, but the biggest among them is that I've had regular meetings for probably around 8 or 9 months now with the developer behind the title, and have given feedback on a number of features and choices. I want this game to do well for 100 separate reasons, but one of those is a sense of personal attachment. So all things disclosed, keep that in mind. I'm super biased towards this game. That being said, I believe what this man has built is an incredible framework for rewarding strategic space combat, and I can't wait to see what the game eventually becomes. The basic concept is real-time strategy, space exploration, and combat, but unlike almost any other RTS game I've ever played, the scope is well and truly beyond what is normally seen as a localized battlefield. Planetary systems, moons, and asteroid fields can be controlled or colonized, but the depth between them creates an aspect of logistical travel which diverges from standard RTS mechanics. I should say at this point that what I am showing is extremely early footage. The contents of this game are subject to change, seeing as it is quite far out from full release, or even early access for that matter. This is currently pre-alpha footage that I've worked with the developer to gather, but having witnessed the way the development process evolves, I can say with confidence that in even just a few short months, entire new mechanics, models, and systems have been added, which expand on the player's ability to immerse themselves in an industrialized, spacefaring future. The tone of the game is very important to underline here. In the past, I have played many RTS games, and the prevailing theme was rapid growth. Something like StarCraft or Stronghold Crusader were a mainstay in my early gamer years, but those games operated around the premise of swelling production and amassing hordes of disposable units to throw against your enemy almost blindly. Falling Frontier takes a different approach. A much more mature approach, if I had to put a word for it, and an approach that true strategy fans will most likely be ecstatic to see. Space is unforgiving, ships are valuable, fuel is important, and the relative investment to colonize a world or develop a fleet is critical to consider. I've gone back and forth a number of times on this script right here because I wanted to properly address the depth here while highlighting just how unique the approach appears to be. The best example of this would probably be combat. Ships are built with individual components and multiple separate hitboxes, much the same way a rocket in the real world has different areas, such as boosters, crew quarters, etc. Ships in Falling Frontier do as well. As a for instance, there is a critical but small hitbox that, if struck, can result in near instant detonation of the entire ship, much the same way a direct strike on a battleship's ballistic arsenal might cause a chain reaction. Instead of relying on simple health bar combat, where the rudimentary tactic can be pretty much boiled down to what is the enemy unit and do I have enough of the counter unit to guarantee a victory, Falling Frontier manages to give every fight a sense of unpredictability and meaning. A couple smaller frigates can go against a larger battleship, or one of the larger units actively being developed, and get annihilated, or, as would probably be the realistic case with actual space combat, they can deal varying amounts of damage based on shot placement. Rotational turret speed, ship speed, target assignment, relative position, all of these things take on a role of importance that is honestly far larger than most other competing RTS games. And as the balancing of resource acquisition and consumption takes place, the atmosphere becomes something quite a bit different than other titles I have recently played, or possibly in my entire life, and turns into what can honestly sometimes feel like some form of cosmic chess. The pacing is slower. You aren't throwing your valuable pieces across the board frantically, you are waiting to see when and where their impact can be maximized, and overall, the atmosphere becomes something transcendent when compared to other games I've enjoyed in the past. Think of the show The Expanse. Think of the faction dynamics in play there. Belters being a spaceborne outer ring coalition of loosely cooperating groups, Mars being a militarized and rigid colony faction, and Earth, a progenitor of these civilizations, with its own unique societal structure as a result. These factional differences are taking shape within Falling Frontier, but with a shared world reality of resource importance. The Expanse does an excellent job of simulating futuristic civilization in a kind of believable way, aside from the crazy sci-fi physics of aliens and extraterrestrial technology, stuff like that. But from a human perspective, purely, the ballistic-based combat, the unpredictability of encounters, and the value of resources, The Expanse as a show demonstrates the atmosphere that Falling Frontier is very successfully cultivating. I'm going to avoid too much in-depth discussion of of individual mechanics here, owing to just how much things could easily change. It's early in the development process, but things like recon stations display the true depth of strategy in play. Basically, you can actively recon an area with a station, but shaping that area from a complete circle to a laser-focused beam will affect range. A station cannot see through planets either, there's a line of sight mechanic here, or other large objects like moons, etc., which makes simple intel gathering its own fully functional strategic action. The logistics panel allows you to disperse resources. Physical shipments of resources will need to be allocated and scheduled so that your network of stations and shipyards can be properly supplied. And the supply sectors themselves help group and organize what is, in reality, an incredibly complex web of systems and different mechanics and different operations that are controlled by the player to create a synchronized collective that can expand across the various planets. Under construction right now are the faction and governmental bonuses, the research trees, the ship upgrades, and new content from a variety of different angles. It's really a very large scope of different upgrades that are coming. But for this early alpha, I was able to play out a doomsday scenario to test both economic expansion and actual combat. Starting on a random planet, there will be known enemy fleets that attack after a given amount of time. The scenario may seem rudimentary, honestly, but even with the most basic structure in place imaginable, the game still takes on what is so clearly an intended atmosphere of high impact and strategy. There is the tension of trying to escape with your valuable mining ships as a fleet of destroyers closes in, or the last stand final moment encounters that will happen rather often, and naturally, by the way, when your ships find themselves in a seemingly unwinnable scenario, but every shot still matters. Every hit could be critical, and right till the moment they are destroyed or disabled, or become crippled, or lose their crew, or whatever it may be, their value is still incredibly high. All of this gameplay atmosphere, that is to say importance, strategy, and slow-paced yet constantly meaningful decision-making, all of it is underlined by a wonderfully expanding soundtrack. Composer Scott Buckley has partnered up on the project to create music for the game, unique music for the game, and the way that the melody builds and climaxes already enhances the experience greatly. I'll link to Scott Buckley's Patreon down below for anyone interested. He does excellent composition work. At such an early stage, most developers are usually hesitant to discuss the final product, but in this particular case, the exact opposite is true. I've been able to see inside the process like never before in my entire life and learned a tremendous amount about game design as a result. The tactics that are taking shape in Falling Frontier are engaging and unique. I have yet to execute some of these things in a given scenario, but creating a flotilla, for example, and placing it in deep space, far from where any recon station would likely ever aim their scope, as well as supplying it with fuel ships to ensure it can jump to almost any planetary system in play, this would allow for a player to have an undetected armada on the field while they operate as if it doesn't exist. This type of maneuver is possible in other titles, sure, but not to the same caliber and not on the same scale. From the wider strategic potential right down to the low-level details, such as the slowly developing planets and moons, once colonized, with city lights and industrial expansion on the surface, the game is providing something extremely unique, and all from the creative mind of one person. It's still a while yet before the game will be in the hands of players, however, seeing a creative individual construct such an engaging world by themselves, and knowing that the hurdles he will face can only get larger, I thought it was the perfect fit, the absolute perfect fit for an indie spotlight, and I'll be linking to the Steam page for the game down below in the description. Anyone at all interested in the slightest can wishlist the title and keep an eye on its progress, because seeing what it is now and what it was 6 months ago and imagining where it's going to be in 6 more, I cannot wait to play this game when it eventually comes out. Also, I will actively be involved, I hope, and I have been so far, in the balancing and the feedback cycle, so expect to see more updates and news on this release in the coming months. Again, if you want to check out more, the Steam page and the Stutterfox developer YouTube page will be linked down below in the description. There's a bunch more info there and individual features, etc. You can wishlist it, like I said, and there are fairly frequent updates that are posted as well, so you can follow along with the incredible growth of this game, which again, I want to emphasize this, is made by one person. That's about it though. If you want to support the channel, links down below. We also have new merchandise, as I said in a bunch of previous videos, with crests and different colors and tri-blend t-shirts and hoodies, whatever it is. Grab one if you want to support another gaming YouTuber to support, and a whole bunch of other things, social media, etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.